Welcome to the NCS Women in Tech podcast. I'm Wynthia. I'm heading up Next Digital at NCS, and recently I was one of the 100 recipients of the inaugural SG 100 Women in Tech. I know from my personal experience how important role models have been to my own career, and I've roped in a number of women leaders in NCS to join me in this podcast. I'm just going to throw a bunch of questions at them and have an interesting conversation about what it means to be a woman in the tech sector today. And hopefully, our conversations will encourage more women to join the tech industry. And that is how the podcast is born. It is my pleasure to invite our next guest, Fang. Hi, Fang.
Hey, hi, Wynthia. Thanks for having me here. It's an honor to be in this session.
So, Fang, tell us, what do you do?
So actually, what I do is I lead a team of cloud architects and engineers to deliver cloud solutions. I also lead a team of architects who design solutions beyond cloud for our customers based on their requirements.
Okay, for the uninitiated, what does a cloud architect do? Because architects design buildings, right? So what does cloud architects do?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. So actually, there was once someone told me that the term architect is actually very specifically for those in the building construction industry. So what we would like to do is always like to tag ourselves as IT architects. We design IT solutions. Yeah. So essentially, to break it down, when you build a building, you need to lay the foundation and you need to design the overall building to ensure it's structurally sound and so on and so forth. So likewise, in a IT solution, we need to do something similar. We need to lay the foundation for the entire solution so that as and when all the different requirements come in, they can come in and work cohesively together and yet align to some of the compliance and standards that's been set forth in the industry as well as with the client's environment.
Now, I'm pretty sure this job didn't exist when you first started out. So what did you want to do when you first started out in your career?
That's a very good question. So when I first started out in my career, actually what I wanted to do was to be like a super developer. I can develop anything in the world. Yeah. Okay. So when I started it out, it's like engineering is quite rare in the industry, especially for women like myself, right? But I realized that I was introduced to this world of computers. I'm not sure if everyone knows that's like Windows 3.1. There's this humongous box.
Showing our age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was this computer X what was it called? Intel 4 or X64. I can't really recall what was the generational number, but essentially the OS was like Windows 3.1. So my sister herself was also in the world of computer science. And when she first introduced that computer in the house, I was actually quite amazed by the things that can be done. I can play computer games, I can do word processing. There's a very nice GUI about it, and you kind of feel superior that you actually know how to use the tech. So that was the point of time where I was introduced to it. And I wanted to be like a super developer that can develop all the solutions in the world. Yeah, so that was what got it started. But along the way, throughout the journey, then I realized that, hey, actually there's more and more things in the tech area that can do besides just development. I could be business analyst, I could be tester, QA, and so on and so forth. But along the way, I've eventually realized that actually the fundamental of all these is architecture. And architecture is the thing that needs to lay the foundation and set the standards for everyone to come in cohesively and run together. So that was what set me on my path later down the career path. Yep.
So do you think being a cloud architect, is that more of a left brain or a right brain type of role?
I would say that actually it needs a balance or equilibrium between the two, I guess. While you need your left brain to be a bit more technical because you need to understand the nature of the technology, how it actually works and wire it up, and what are the things that it can fulfill. There's also the right side of the brain because you need to first not do tech for the sake of doing tech, but really look at fundamentally what is the problem that you're trying to address or what's the challenge that you need to solve. Knowing that and knowing what is the root cause of that, you can come up with better solutions and the right application of the technology to that. So henceforth, I think this is a equal yin and yang thing with a left brain, right brain equilibrium. Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to be an architect, what would you advise them? What should they do? What should they learn? What should they be exposed to be able to be on the kind of a career track that you have been on?
Okay. if I were to go back in time, I think one of the key things I would like to tell myself, as well as anyone who's new to this, is really be very open-minded about it. I was in a very fortunate position that very early in the stage of my career, I was exposed to a lot of different roles and a lot of different technologies. So that was what it got me spark my interest. And because as I go through each of the processes and the roles throughout the entire project portfolio, I realized that how everything fits in together. Um, at times, I feel that I was like being overtaxed or overstressed by my boss, but I realized that keeping an open mind and staying really inquisitive and really ask questions, very thoughtful questions, right, does help in the entire journey. So at the end, when I look back on my journey, when I go through those large scale complex implementation projects, I realize the learnings that I gained from there really help me in the later stage of my life as I go through all the solutions and I look at things from a very different perspective for my customers. Yeah.
So being open to trying different roles
Yes,
throughout your
exactly.
career helps.
Yes, definitely.
So did you study engineering when you were in university?
Actually, I started with computer science. That was like first year when we started the School of Computing that spawned off from School of Science.
How
Yeah.
was the gender ratio in that class?
Yes. The gender ratio at the point of time, I guess there were a lot of guys in the class, and especially a lot of folks who goes into this hardcore computer science versus information systems. So you tend to see that a lot of guys goes into the computer science part, focusing on algorithms, sometimes more on the engineering aspect, the networking side of things, where the ladies in the class would like to go into information systems, look at the business aspect applications of the solution, and talk about the softer aspects of how the business can drive IT and so on and so forth. So it is quite skewed, at least in the initial years of my university life. Yeah.
There's a perception that the tech industry is very male dominated. Has that been your experience?
Actually, yes. If you were to look at the current ratio of male versus female in NCS, as well as some of the previous firms that I work with, there's generally more male than female. Okay, and I think one of the reasons why this is so is the tech industry is perceived as something that is like very technical and engineering, and those are the topics that interest the species rather than the female species, I guess.
So how do you think we can get more women interested in our industry?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, right? And I also sometimes keep thinking about this. I think for women in STEM, right, it's actually very natural fit, at least for myself, to join tech because I'm frankly speaking, I'm a mathematical student by training. Okay, so I'm very interested in maths equations, algorithms, finding a problem and trying to fix it and create a construct that make it repeatable. So the world of algorithms comes very natural to me. And I thought that my first interest in tech in IT was sparked off by the sheer fact that uh, maths was one of the key things that interested me and drove me into the world of algorithms. Uh, I guess where I'm coming from is for women's coming in and trying to interest them, right? For those who are especially interested in mathematical formulas or maths in general, or even the nature of problem solving, actually tech is actually quite a natural fit because you look at ways and means to break down a problem and then find the solutions to go and solve that. It could be one solution, it could be multiple solutions, and there's multiple pathways. There's always no one right answer, and so on and so forth. So, which I thought that's an interesting thing. Perhaps more could be done in terms of exposure for women in tech to share their experiences, so that at least it it sort of breaks the perception that this is a very male dominated industries. And it would be good to share some of the women who do well in those areas. Need not necessarily all be like in management roles. It could be
Yeah, we need
folks who
role
are do
models at
role
all
models like
levels.
all
Yeah.
levels, including engineering, QA, and so on and so forth, for various business requirements or Scrum Masters, and so on and so forth. I thought having that diversity to show that there are people out there who do those roles and do them very well in their work, right, and have that work-life balance, that will help encourage more folks to join us in the IT as well as the STEM industry. Yeah.
So do you think what can women do more to help one another in the industry?
I wouldn't say like Alcoholics Anonymous, right? That you form social support groups. But I guess it's more of open forums for women to share what they have been doing, what the interesting that they things to do, or some of the things that they have to overcome in order to get to where they are. I guess sharing experience a lot it does really help, and hearing that there are people who encounter something similar to you and how they overcome that does help a lot in getting people exposed to this industry and knowing that it's actually not such a tall order to join the tech industry, especially for women, I guess. Yeah.
So talking about sharing their experiences, right? Looking at your career and all the things that you've done, what will be your advice to the women of all ages who's thinking of joining the industry?
Okay. I think this goes back to something I mentioned earlier. Stay open minded, stay inquisitive. Don't be too worried about falling because with every fall, right, you learn new things. Yeah. So to keep being curious, keep challenging yourself, and it's all right if you fail. Just pick yourself out and move on from there. Yeah, because there's always a new learning that you get with each lesson that you have. Yeah.
So along your career, are there women who have inspired you?
Okay, so this is a very good question. Yeah, yeah. Not to say that I'm trying to praise my boss, right? But one of the role models I have is actually my current boss, Xiao Yan. So very early on in my stage, around fifth year of my career, I was actually introduced to Xiao Yan and her team. So at that point of time, it was quite eye-opening for me because in the first 4 years of my life, I was with a very male-dominated project team. I have male project managers, male project directors, uh, senior architects who are also males. Okay, and there's very little female in my team in the first 4 years of my life. But when I joined Xiao Yan's team, it was quite radically different. Xiao Yan has a team of very dynamic solution architects, out of which almost 75% are women. So I see the way that they handle the situations, the solutions they have, the nature of the customers. That actually was quite eye-opening for someone new to that role, okay, and someone trying to start off their career in solution architecture. Yeah. So, and then Xiao Yan had regular sessions, right, for everyone to share in a very safe and open environment what are the things that they do, what are the things that they learn, and then how we can advise each other and support each other and progress in the work that we do. So I think that few years with Xiao Yan was quite eye-opening for me, and it kind of reassured me that actually that is a role model I can work towards too, with regards to a pathway in architecture. Yeah.
So today, as a leader of teams, how do you encourage diversity?
I think one of the key thing is diversity for me um, means like having different people of different strengths or even weaknesses happening in the same team. It could be men, it could be women.
So that they
Yeah,
all complement each other.
and they
Yeah.
all complement each other. I think the key thing is creating a safe environment for them. Okay, really a very open environment where they can openly share their vulnerabilities, their shortcomings, or even their strength, and learn from each other and grow from there. I think that will help encourage diversity in the team. And that there's a difference in opinion, but it's okay. And then we can tap on each other and then see how we can grow together as a whole.
So when we think about women in tech, especially women leaders in tech, do you think your own leadership style has changed over the years?
Oh, definitely. I think in the initial years of my career, right, as well as the initial foray into leadership, I was always of the belief that the leader has to be like a lion, set the direction, give very specific instructions to everyone so that everyone follow it to the dog. Okay, run it like a military style, right? Discipline workforce so that everything is controlled. QA and so on and so forth. But along the way, as I talk to more and more people and I gain more exposure to more and more leaders, and even some of these conversations with leaders who are in my customers' context, I realized that my leadership style has changed. It has moved from a more dogmatic model, I would say, into a more advisory and coaching and mentoring kind of things. It's about creating environments and the right environmental factors for the teams with you to grow and have room space to fail, but yet learn and then move along the way to progress their career. And sometimes they may realize that the things that they are doing may not necessarily be what they would like to do. And it's okay to say that and pivot along the way. Yeah.
So throughout your career, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
You want to share with us?
Yeah. Okay. So I think at quite early set of my career, right, I was always looking out for, especially when I mentioned that I was working with quite a lot of male bosses, and they were quite while they are nice by nature, they are quite strict and regimental with regards to how they would run the project. So there are a lot of times that I realize that I ask certain questions and I will feel that I may not be asking the right questions or not right asking intelligent enough questions. So I will feel a bit bad, but because my character is a bit more aggressive, I will still continue to hit back and try and see how I can get my answers and so on and so forth. But along the way, as I progress along, I realize that essentially it boils down to whether you are confident in the things that you do. And then you need to know what is the value that you contribute to both a project, an opportunity, or even to the organization as a whole, as well as to your customers. So by understanding what is truly your value in the entire equation, that actually builds a lot of confidence into myself. Sometimes when you go into a meeting or a opportunity and someone else tries to talk you down, but knowing exactly what you believe is the value that you bring to the equation, right? That help reaffirms some of the things I do. And then with that beneath, I try to make sure that I tactfully bring forth a certain position or certain ideas to the table and see how we can collectively move on from there. So I think having that beneath and principle, right, does help me push through this and start to reduce the imposter syndrome in myself.
I mean, I think certainly the experiences that you've gone through will be very, very useful for a lot of young women who are starting out, especially in certain very male-dominated areas within the tech industry. So thank you for sharing that. As one last question, what would be your advice to all our listeners out there?
Okay, yeah. This will sound old, but yeah, stay open-minded. Okay, keep challenging yourself. I think that's the key, and always internalize and analyze and see what you are doing. Does that align with your own core values? And then pivot if it's not right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ifang.
Thank you, Wynthia, for having me. It's a pleasure.
And that's a wrap for NCS Women in Tech podcast. Thank you for joining me in this podcast. If you have feedback on our podcast or would like to join us to carve out a career in tech, follow us on our LinkedIn page, NCS Group, or feel free to drop us a line at reachus@ncs.com.sg.